Okay, today we're going to start on the steering. So we just pulled the engine back out. We had it in there just to sort of figure out how much room we had to work with. And then we spent a good couple of hours there a couple of days ago trying to basically figure out how we're going to make this steering work. Once you add suspension, it adds a whole lot more complexity. So we're going to start making a few different parts and basically start getting stuff tacked in place. We think we've got a pretty good game plan there. So yeah, I'm going to get stuck into it. Okay, we've got the suspension here pretty well mocked up, tacked in place. We still have to connect the steering to the steering shaft, but this is a basic swing set style of steering. So as you can see, we've got pretty good turning radius on both the inside and the outside tire. Basically, right now, it's very hard to actually measure the bump steer just going off the tires and everything, as there's too much stuff in the way. What we're going to do now is make some wheel alignment plates that we can bolt to the hubs and accurately measure, so we can get a bit of an idea of how much bump steer we have, and then we can figure out what adjustments we need to make essentially to solve that issue. So we've got our plates made up and installed. We've cycled the suspension travel, and unfortunately there is quite a reasonable amount of bump steer. Bump steer basically is, as the suspension travels up and down, the wheels are meant to move up and down in a line with each other. What we've got right now is at full drop, we've got quite a fair bit of toe out. And then as the wheels travel up through the cycle, they go to toe in. And so that is what bump steer is. As it cycles like that, you're getting misalignment between the front wheels. We're going to have to change the pivot points down here on the arm, on the frame. So we're going to move these up, and then we're going to cut the arm off at the knuckle, and move that up as well. If we can get the lower control arm pretty much in line with the steering arm, that will definitely help eliminate some of that bump steer. As you can see right now, the lower arm is considerably lower than the steering arm. If we were running like a double wishbone or double A-arm sort of style suspension, this wouldn't really be a concern. However, because we have no pivot here and it's basically just a swing, swinging off the center pivots, we need to basically get the steering arm pivot points in line with the lower control arm pivot points. And then that will eliminate a lot of the bump steer that we are currently experiencing. We don't need to get zero bump steer, but right now an inch of bump steer over 2 inches of travel is like just way too much. So it shouldn't take too long, hopefully, just to cut this up and tack it all back together where we want it and go from there. Okay, we've got the arm welded back on now. So we've lifted up the pivot points at the frame. We cut it off at the knuckle and then lifted it right up, as before we had it right down the bottom. As you can see from this side to the other side there, as we haven't done the other side just yet. And we now have virtually no bump steer whatsoever, which is going to be so much better. As before, it was somewhere around about 1.5 inches of bump steer. So this has really changed the bump, and this will be really good. So we'll go ahead and do that on the other side now. As you can see, we've got it all basically finalized here now as far as the main steering components and everything go. We've cycled all the suspension and we are extremely happy with how little bump steer we have now. I think it's down to about 1/4 of an inch over the whole travel, which, you know, with what we have to work with as far as the engine placement and all that sort of thing goes, that's really good for us. We're quite happy with that. So the next step is basically to finalize this linkage here. This is how it originally was before it had suspension on it. It's going to need a little bit of modification just to basically make it all work. And yeah, so we're going to have to extend this arm a little bit and modify some of the mount here just to get a little bit of clearance. But yeah, that's basically all we're going to have to do there. Okay, so we've got all of the steering now connected. We've got the linkage going from the steering shaft over to the left-hand side. We ended up not having to modify anything how it was sitting over this side. We just had to change the position where this mounts on this side over here just a little bit. And now we've got great steering all the way around, both sides, lock to lock, which is great. We made up a couple of these little Delrin bushings. So we need 2 in each one of these arms here and these idler arms. So that'll stiffen those right up and eliminate any sort of wiggle and free play that we had before. So yeah, we're very happy with how this all turned out, given the fact that there's virtually no room whatsoever to work with in there. The next step is basically to weld everything out. There's still a couple of bushings and stuff to make for the shocks and whatnot. But yeah, that is pretty much this episode done. The front suspension, the steering is all pretty much finalized. Just got to weld it together. So stick around for the next episode. We're going to get stuck into the rear suspension.